March 17, 1943. A quiet, wood-paneled office in Berlin. Admiral Wilhelm Canaris, head of German military intelligence, holds a single sheet of paper. It's a spy report from America, and it contains an impossible number. A number so absurd, so fantastical, that it must be a joke, a piece of clumsy enemy propaganda. Subscribe for more untold World War II stories. The report claims a single American factory, called Willow Run, will soon be producing one 4-engine heavy bomber every 60 minutes. To the German High Command, this was laughable. Their own advanced factories, the pride of the Reich, took weeks to build a comparable plane. But Canaris wasn't laughing. He was a professional spy, a man who dealt in cold, hard facts. He knew in that moment that if this number was even half true, the war was already lost. This is the story of a terrifying fact, and the ideological blindness that refused to see it. In 1943, the tide of the war was turning. The disaster at Stalingrad had bled the German army white. Yet in Hitler's headquarters, the fantasy of German superiority lived on. They believed the war was a battle of will, and that the pure German soldier was destined to win. Into this echo chamber, Canaris had to present his impossible number. He took the report to the second most powerful man in the Reich, the head of the Luftwaffe, Hermann Göring. Göring, a flamboyant World War I ace, looked at the report and laughed out loud. "Americans cannot build airplanes," he sneered. "They are very good at refrigerators and razor blades, but not airplanes." This wasn't just a flippant remark. It was the core of the entire Nazi ideology. To them, America was a mongrel nation, a chaotic mess of immigrants, African Americans, and women. They were a nation of shopkeepers, not warriors. The idea that this inferior society could outproduce the German master race wasn't just unlikely, it was ideologically impossible. The report was sent to Hitler. His reaction was even more venomous. This wasn't a strategic assessment, it was a personal insult. He dismissed the numbers as Jewish propaganda, an obvious lie. The report was buried. The warning was ignored. The admiral who delivered it was marked as a defeatist, a man whose loyalty was now in question. Half a world away, in Michigan, the impossible was becoming terrifyingly real. The Willow Run bomber plant was a monster. It was the most enormous room in the history of man, a single building stretching for over half a mile. Inside, Henry Ford and his production chief, Charles Sorensen, were applying the ruthless efficiency of car manufacturing to the B-24 Liberator, a beast with 1.5 million individual parts. The old guard of the aviation industry had scoffed, saying, "You can't expect a blacksmith to make a watch overnight." Ford proved them wrong. He deconstructed the entire plane into simple, manageable sub-assemblies. And who was building this weapon? The very people Hitler mocked. At its peak, Willow Run employed 42,000 people. Nearly a third were women, the iconic Rosie the Riveters. Thousands more were African Americans and immigrants, all working side by side, 24 hours a day, 6 days a week. This was the mongrel society Hitler disdained, and they were about to bury the Third Reich in an avalanche of steel. The consequences of Germany's denial were inevitable. The prophecy of Willow Run came true. In 1944, the skies over Germany went dark. The Allied Big Week bombing campaign saw thousands of bombers, many from that single factory, pound the German war machine into dust. The Luftwaffe rose to defend its home and was annihilated. It wasn't a fair fight. For every German fighter shot down, there was only a trickle of replacements. For every American bomber lost, 10 more were already crossing the Atlantic. It was exactly as Canaris had warned. No longer a war of soldiers, but a war of mathematics. And what became of the man who tried to sound the alarm? Admiral Canaris, for the crime of being right, was arrested by the Gestapo after the failed plot to kill Hitler. On April 9, 1945, just weeks before the war's end, he was brutally executed. He was murdered by the very regime he had tried to save from its own fantasy. When the guns fell silent, the final numbers were counted. The report from 1943 wasn't just accurate, It was an understatement. At its peak, Willow Run did produce a B-24 Liberator every 63 minutes. That one factory produced more heavy bombers than the entire German aircraft industry combined. The failure wasn't one of spying. The German agents did their job. The failure was a failure of ideology, a fanatical refusal to believe a fact that contradicted their worldview. They were defeated not by a secret weapon, but by simple arithmetic.